Yo, what is up, guys? Man, I'm digging that intro music. I don't know about you guys, but I came up with it a couple months ago and I haven't really used it much, but I put it to use and I'm liking it. So, thanks for jumping on, especially if you're here watching live and it's Memorial Day weekend. We're on the actual day, Memorial Day, but everybody is probably off, taking a 3-day weekend. And, before getting into anything, I just want to take a second here to share, just what it means and really just take a second to remember the fallen and the people that put their lives on the line and ultimately paid that sacrifice for us to be here, for me to be on this live and to be in this country. And, just when you really step back and think about it, we've gone through so much as a country, and we wouldn't be here without those individuals that stood up and went out to, war and through these battles and put their lives on the line and ultimately paid that sacrifice. And, I just want to take a second to honor them and remember them, and not only them, but their family members, whether it is a direct family member or a friend. We all know somebody that probably has, given paid that sacrifice. So just take a second and remember them before we get into the noise of this and the day and everything else. Like, it's really just awesome that we are able to do this and to live our lives this way. And a big, big, big part of it we wouldn't even be able to do a lot of this without that sacrifice. So thank you to everybody that has made that sacrifice and all of the family members that have lived through, missing their loved ones and everything else. I don't know what else to say here. It just means so much to me. So thank you. So today we are doing newsletter review. If you are not familiar with what I'm doing here, if you have not seen this yet, I've pretty much gone and done a 30-minute live stream every day in May. I had to take a break for a weekend when I was out of town with no service, but I've been really trying to push myself, trying to figure out what content could help people in the community on LinkedIn and, other channels. And I started off kind of randomly figuring this stuff out, and then I decided like maybe there could be like little series that we could do. And so kind of came up with some options, and I'll kind of give you the breakdown of what it's usually like. And this week is kind of a good example. So Monday we are doing the newsletter review. That's what I'm doing here today. We're doing newsletter review. If you aren't familiar with the fact that I write a weekly newsletter, it's from the buyer's perspective, and it really is just a lot of different angles and topics about how to work with buyers, but gives you the perspective from the other side of the table. So if you're a sales rep or you're calling and working with buyers directly, this newsletter is an awesome addition to help you really kind of see that other side of the table and how the interactions that you have with the buyers, how it really has a reaction to how they react to you, how they react to the business, how they really treat you in that relationship within their stack of hundreds of vendors that they work with. And so that's what we're going to do today in just a minute. Tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a live product review. So this series is about doing not just a taste test, but sharing what the buyer's perspective is on how we would actually look at products. So that could be at a trade show, it could be in a category review, or somebody ships a random sample and we have a product in front of us. What do we think of it? How do we look at it? How do we, judge it, grade it? How do we figure out, is it a good fit for us and our store? Is it something that we're interested in? And then at the end, I will also do taste testing, kind of share my perspective and, really help you understand the process and the mindset of what buyers are looking at when they see a product land in front of them. And then on Wednesday, actually, I forgot the order. I think it's Wednesday, we're doing Battle of the Sets. So this is a series about the buyer's perspective of merchandising. So what we do is I go out and take a picture of one category at two different retailers, and we're not necessarily battling them up against each other. Each retailer has their own customer profile and target audience that they're hitting, right? And so what we want to do is really evaluate each of them. And from a buyer's perspective, I'm going to break down, like, how do you look at these schematics? How do you look at the vertical versus horizontal merchandising? How do you look at the brand allocation and the facing and pack out efficiency? All of those things kind of go into it. And then, I'll kind of share where I see potential gaps, where I see that they're winning, and, what my overall take of those different sets are. And then the Thursday call is going to be a buyer hotline. This is just for me, giving me a chance to connect with y'all, answer questions, talk about different topics, and be here as a resource to help you. So that's a great time to join live, ask your questions, get them answered, right there on the spot from a buyer's perspective. Great for sales reps. If you are not a sales rep, but you know of somebody who might get some value out of this, I would love it if you could share it with them. This is one of my favorite ones, and it really depends on the engagement though. So the more people we can get actually on in the live session, asking questions, engaging, it's going to be the best possible outcome for everybody that's watching, getting the most value out of it, and truly understanding what is going on from a retailer or the buyer's perspective. And then this week, I am also leaving, going out of town for the weekend. So the lives are going to look a little different. Like Monday through Thursday will be pretty structured. It will be, on LinkedIn, scheduled. Friday through probably Monday will be more just, off the cuff. I'm going to be on the road. So I'm going over to Wyoming to see my nephew graduate high school, watch his graduation. So my daughter and I are doing a road trip there, which means that I'm not going to be scheduling it, and I'll probably do it on the fly. I'll be on my mobile where I can get access, like internet access. And I don't know if it's going to be LinkedIn or YouTube, but more likely than not, probably be TikTok, where it's just easier for that on the fly and getting people in and viewers and things like that. So anyway, that's the breakdown of the series. But if you didn't catch it, there is a theme here that everything is from a buyer's perspective. I was in the seat for 8 years at New Seasons, been in retail for over 20 years. I have a lot of understanding of how this works from this side, from both the store level and the corporate level. And so I want to share that with people. I want to give you the behind the scenes look, help you understand what it is like from this side. Because when you're a sales rep working with a buyer, the more you have understanding and empathy towards the buyer and their situation and what they're going through, and you understand what their priorities are, you're going to be able to sell better. And we're going to help you build sales through this understanding. That's what my goal is. That's what I am doing here. So very excited to do this. I'm going to jump into the newsletter now. But I want you to know, as we pull up the newsletter, this is, let me pull it up here. One more time. Hold on. There we go. So as we get through the newsletter, one of the things that you should know is this year I started doing more of a monthly theme. And then each week within the month has a topic that we get into. So we're finishing up May right now, and the theme was really staying in the conversation. So, meaning follow ups, from after a meeting, in between meetings, after a trade show, could be an unprompted message just to, like make sure that you're staying on the buyer's radar or adding value to them. We kind of covered all of that this month. So this is more of a recap. It's really going to be about what it is that we learned throughout this month and then what standards you should be holding to make sure that you are really buyer ready and that you are showing up in the best possible way for them. So if you're live, as I'm going through, make sure throw it in the chat. If you're here watching live, I'd love to see who's here joining. And if you have any questions at all, comments or thoughts on whatever it is we're going into, go ahead and throw them into the chat and I will keep an eye on that so that we can cover that. All right, let's go. Let's get into it. All right, so like I said, we are doing a recap here. So one thing I want to make sure is clear is that there are, like I said earlier, there are hundreds of reps and brokers, brands, distributors. There's hundreds of different people that the buyers work with. We don't remember them all. We don't, we can't remember every email interaction and everything that, really stands out. But what we do see is patterns. And we know that, they're the best the best reps that we work with, the ones that we really respect the most. They're not really they're not just out there being loud and like getting information to us, like trying to stay top of mind. They're really the ones they see, we can see, like we can feel it over time. Like they've built habits that we can actually feel, and in a good way. There you can build a bad habit or a good habit of how you interact. And actually, I say habit in here, but really it's the standards. And I really focus on what standard we hold. And the buyer ready standards is what we work towards, which means that as you are interacting with a buyer, you are being respectful of their time. You understand what they are going through and you have that empathy. You add value to them and not just try to sell your own product or yourself. So there's a lot of this conversation that we're having today about this is going to be about what do those standards look like? Where do slip ups happen? Like where does friction come up and how does it impact you and the buyer and like that relationship? So if you missed any of the episodes previously, I would say go back and check them out. I've reviewed every newsletter in May. So you can go back to, my YouTube or LinkedIn events and you can see the recordings from it and check them out. But this kind of gives you the breakdown overall recap of it. And I've got my Memorial Day section in here. And I've just talked about this. So right here, this is a great piece here. And this really sums it up well. Like when you are trying to stay top of mind or you're trying to stay in the conversation with a buyer, you got to realize this shouldn't just be a tactic. Like it shouldn't be, oh, I want to send an email just to stay top of mind. I shouldn't, respond in, to email that I hasn't gotten a response yet. And I shouldn't do that just in like a day, just to, like serve my goals. And I need to kind of hold what those standards are and keep things running smoothly. So it's not really like a tactic that we use. It's the standards that we want. And what we want to do is reduce the friction. I call this operational friction. Operational friction is anything that can slow a buyer down from moving something forward or making a decision. So if you think about it that way, when you are sending an email, whether that is an initial email or a follow-up like this, then you want to be able to point to your communication and say, I've provided all the information, I'm adding value in whichever way that means necessary for that email. And I'm making it easy for the buyer to do their job, to push things forward. If you can look at it yourself and you do a review and you see something where it's like, hey, take a look at this attachment, and there's some information in there that could be pulled up and summarized or whatever it is, like if you can speed it up for the buyer, you're going to make your life so much easier. So like I said already, like the reality for buyers is that we're not really trusting, we're not like grading and trusting these reps that are just communicating the most. It's really about how they communicate and what they communicate. What's their intention? What value do they add? Or are they helping us, or are they making it harder? Are they adding friction and slowing us down? So some of these bullet points here, the things that we really look out for and notice, like these are the patterns that we see over time. And we notice the good things that are, we remember who has a rhythm. And what it feels like to me as a buyer is a rhythm. But what it should feel like to you is a system. And so this is a key differentiator right here. Like this is a key point that you want to take home. The system that you have should allow you to be consistent over time. If you're following up, you should have a system in place. How do I make sure that if I don't get a response from Robert in 7 days, 14 days, whatever it is, I'm going to make sure to follow up with him, and I'm going to make sure to drive things forward, move things in the right direction. Now, that is a system to you, but to me, that's the rhythm that I feel as a buyer. And we do feel it. A lot of the reps that I worked with, I would see and feel the rhythm, because especially with brokers, it was really easy to see they had a system in place when on a Tuesday afternoon, I would maybe get one or two emails from the same rep, different email chains. They're both following up. And, it's like, okay, that person clearly sent these emails on the same day. They didn't get a response on either of them. And now they were following up on that whatever timeline. It's very clear for us to see that. And that's the rhythm that we feel. And, honestly, like one thing I want to make note here of too is that as I talk about all of this stuff, I am peeling back and trying to explain it in a different way than how I actually felt it as a buyer. Because when I'm a buyer and I'm in the seat and I'm in that moment, I'm doing the things, I'm not necessarily thinking and talking like this and thinking, oh, they caused operational friction. Like that's not a thing. That's not what I'm doing. So what I really am doing is feeling, and the impact. If I feel like I'm slowed down, that's the frustration that I'm feeling. I'm not saying they caused operational friction. I'm feeling and doing extra work. Anyway, little tangent there. But a couple of these other bullet points here is that, we want to have people that are like level. We don't want to have big spikes in your emotions. And, if things didn't go your way, are you going to be a little hissy about it? Or are you going to, feel a little bit like it's personal and things like that? The reps that really come and stand out best are the ones that can be consistent with not just their timing or their communication, like what they write, but it's how they show up. And that actually happens in both email and in person or virtual call, whatever it is. But those reps are just showing up consistently, whatever comes their way. If it's a buyer not responding, or they responded in a way that they didn't necessarily think would happen or whatever, they roll with it and they come back with something that is very consistent with their tone, and they're not really changing because of the circumstance. This one right here, I gotta be honest, we pay attention to the reps whose updates are short, clean, and never wasted. So this goes back to the operational friction. We're way more likely to respond, but also just respond quicker if the emails are short, concise, to the point, very clear on what it is that you need, how I can help you, and like finish whatever it is, whatever the ask that you have is. So that's just an important reminder here that in the email formatting itself and how you present the information does make a difference. And what I would say is, this last line here, consistency with value earns trust. And volume without value, it's what loses it. It's what loses trust and it erodes. So being consistent is a value. And when you can do that consistently, day in, day out for months, we're going to build that trust and we know who we're working with. We know what to expect. We have that rhythm that we're feeling, which is a system that you built. That is what you want. You want to build the system that builds trust that can then compound into the sales and the movement that you're looking for in your business. All right. So a lot of the things that we talked about where friction shows up in these situations, staying in the conversation and things like that. So the tone, like we just talked about that a little bit, sometimes the tone changed when people weren't getting the response that they wanted. Like if they got a no, they'd get a little butthurt. And, sometimes that would show up. And that is something I think it makes sense to me. Like for most people I would talk to, they would be like, well, that's weird. Like, why would you do that? It's easy to say that, but actually showing up in that way and not letting your emotions get the best of you, it can be a little bit harder. And some people fell into that trap, but that is one of those things where you have to really check yourself before you wreck yourself. I just set myself up for that one. Dang. I wish I had somebody here with me so that like we could play off of each other with that, but whatever. All right. So the other thing that this isn't necessarily a slowdown. It's really more of a partnership thing. But when every email leads to some kind of pitch in some way, like that is just exhausting. You're always in sales mode. I imagine it's exhausting for you too. But if you are sending me an email that is supposed to be a value add to me, like, hey, I saw this article, and then you pitch it, like switch it to pitch your product, then I just kind of see through that and it becomes noise. And, what I really value as a buyer, if somebody is reaching out unprompted and they want to add value, add value. Like find something that will truly add value to me as the buyer in my category, the retailer, whatever it is, but don't make it about yourself. And that's the filter. And we talked about it last week, if you are sending a message and you ask yourself, like, is this to serve me or is it to serve the buyer? You got to be able to answer that and say that this is to serve the buyer. If you're answering it and it's to serve yourself, I would really question whether you or not you should send that email. And then just a couple other things here. So like when things get busy, which it gets stressful, I know, this is where the system falls apart. And we talked about this, and the cadence that you should have drops off. So this is why it's super important to have that system. So after every email, whatever it is, could be as simple as scheduling an email to come back up at a certain time. Whatever it is, you got to be able to stay consistent with it, because when you don't, the buyers know, and it could go literally 6 months before you respond again and say, hey, you were interested in this product and I'd love to reconnect and get like that's just an email that nobody wants to see. And like, I'm sure you don't want to send it. At that point, you realized you didn't reach out for 6 months. That's a little embarrassing. And so you feel bad about it. And it's not to say that you shouldn't send the email, just own it. Own the fact that you messed up, you didn't send the information, and you wanted to follow up and see if there's an opportunity right now. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't send the email, but you should try to avoid that cost before avoid that at any cost before you get to that point. And the biggest thing here, which is this is not all about just one email, it's the pattern. We talked about it a little bit already, but buyers see the pattern of the reps. And we trust the reps that are more consistent than we trust the reps that are not. Or if they're inconsistent or they're not adding value and they're only pitching themselves, like there is a clear point in to which that will affect your business. If you are not a rep that a buyer can trust, it will affect your business 100%. All right, so the buyer impact. So this is what the buyer, when the buyer feels all of this going on, this is how the relationship starts to erode and potentially what you start seeing as a rep, what the buyer is doing in that relationship. And, a lot of this is pretty similar, like week to week, they're going to be similar bullet points, but honestly, it's intentional to make sure that you are aware the effect of your actions and how that will influence your brand's performance and what we were just talking about, the trust that you have with the buyer. So when you start looking at this, like, when that rep is having issues with communication, we're going to start either reading their emails last, like, we see your name pop up in the inbox, but I'll just skip over it and come back to it. Maybe we have a lot of emails, maybe we don't get back to it. But then it could also just be that we skim through them and we don't really catch all the information that maybe we should have, and we're not really engaged at the same level. Now, I want to pause there and let you know this may seem unfair. It may seem like, well, it's your job to be engaged with everybody. That's true to some extent, but there are the nuances. And just like everybody, we have a lot on our plate and we're going to prioritize. We have to prioritize, especially when it comes to email. Most of the time, a buyer cannot stay on top of their email and get through every email that comes through every single day. It's just very unlikely. Doesn't mean that it can't happen, but if you would be spending all of your time or the majority of your time looking at email, not doing your actual job. And I say actual job. This is the part where it's not fair, right? Like, I get it. It might seem unfair, but this is the real world, and I want you to be prepared for it. This is when buyers ghost you. This is when they maybe respond to one of the asks that you had, but not another, or whatever it is. Like, you're going to feel it in the relationship. And that ultimately comes back to how you're going to feel it in your sales and in the results of what products you're getting on shelf, what programs you're running, what merchandising you're going to be able to do. All of that comes back to this point that you have to make the job easy for the buyer. Like, whatever you are doing with the buyer, that interaction should make their job easier, not harder. And okay, so a couple other things. We're coming up on time here, so I'll just kind of go through these fairly quickly. But I've already talked a little bit about this, but things come up differently, right? Like, I just covered this. We cringe a little bit when we see your name pop up or somebody, talks about you. Like, that's a real thing. Like, when we were in the buyer's group or like, in our cubicle area and we were talking and somebody brought up a rep's name and other people cringe. That is a thing. Please don't dismiss that. You do not want to be the rep that buyers cringe when they hear your name. That is not something you want. So this is why it is so important to be following these buyer ready standards. There are standards across every piece of the relationship, and we're working through them. But right now we're talking about follow-ups and email communication. So you want to make sure that you are following those standards, that you are really the buyer, you really make the buyer's job easier and not harder. And we're going to get into that right now. What are the standards? Well, we talked about it from the inverse side previously. We talked about showing up the same way. That doesn't happen, and that's when friction shows up. So now, what's the standard? Like, we're just flipping it in reverse here. We're going to show up the same way, whether or not, whatever the interaction is, whatever the feelings are, we have to show up the same way. We have to show up consistently and on a system that we have in place. So the tone has to be good. You have to show up consistently, and you have to be able to point to the fact that you are helping the buyer in some way or another. You're not sending these emails just to serve yourself. You're helping them. When you help solve their problems in their categories, you're going to get more opportunities. And when you make it easier for them to do, you're going to get even more opportunities. So we have to be able to think about this and building the habits that we are talking about, and the standards have to happen before you lose that trust and like become that rep that is really making the buyer cringe and like avoid you, or maybe not give you as much of attention or things like that. So I said it plenty of times here, but consistency is the key in so many areas. Having a system means that you can be consistent. So create the system, you create consistency, and when you do that for a long or extended period of time, you're going to create sales momentum. You're going to get more opportunities. You're going to get more face-to-face time with the buyer. You're going to get more chances to pitch your product or a program or a pricing structure. You're going to get and see more of what you want when you show up with buyer-ready standards. And that's pretty much it here. I'm over the 30 minutes, so I'm going to wrap it up here. But, again, this is not really about like a rep building the relationship with just one message. Like, this is every interaction over time builds the relationship. And so, again, that is why having these standards are so important. But I'm going to wrap it up here. This newsletter is right now sent through email, and when you sign up, you're going to get a weekly email. It's going to have, again, a monthly theme. Next month, we're talking about promotions and promo planning, what that looks like, and how to help you navigate that situation, or that situation with the buyer, and how to approach that. The other thing I want to mention too is right now it's on a newsletter, but this is a preview right now of what I'm working on, where it's going to be something a little bit more than just a newsletter. And we're going to have opportunity in here to not just read the newsletter, but learn from it, practice some drills, get some information in here that will help you retain the information more. And yeah, I can't give it all away, but excited for that to come out, and that will probably be next month or so, is my guess. And yeah, next live is tomorrow. I'm going to be doing that product review, so make sure to stay tuned, or like to tune in. I'm rushing now, you can tell. Okay, tomorrow, doing product review. I'm going to be doing a First Form Power Pro bar. I think that's Power Pro. Excited to do that. I've actually tried the product before, but it is something that I wanted to do the product review on and share with you all, so that you have an idea of what it is, what it's like. And it is it's a instant consumable product, ready to eat. So easy for me to do. And I'm doing the phase 1 of Live Hard program right now, so I have limited options on what I can do for product reviews. So that's why I went with this one. But yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you on the next one.